Let's talk about some of the challenges that I think come with raising teenagers and young adults. Right. Hi, I am Mary Wilson. I'm a homeschooling mom of four kids, though I only have two left in my homeschool. My oldest has now graduated from college. She is 21. My second daughter is at the local community college. She is 19. My third child is my son, who will be a senior in the fall. And my fourth child, my baby, will be a sophomore in high school. So I am in the midst of working with and raising older children and have been in the teen years for quite some time. So I thought I would just share today some of the challenges that I have faced that perhaps you are facing too, and some of the ways we have handled them, or just a little empathy for you so that you know you are not alone. All right. So there are five things. They are in no particular order of like how hard they are or anything like that, just in the order that they kind of came to my mind and made sense. So the first one that became particularly hard as my oldest hit 15, 16 years old and got a job was retail work schedules. Now, I got lucky with my oldest. She was working at a local gym doing some coaching and teaching, so her schedule was very consistent. But then my second daughter got a job at a local fast food restaurant, and whoo, boy, was it quite interesting to enter the world of retail work schedules. Oh, the inconsistency. Obviously, you can give them times you're available, but then they can pick and choose when to schedule you in those times. And it's beneficial to your kids to be available as much as possible. And of course, homeschoolers have that added benefit of having daytime availability, which can make them look really attractive to a job. But it can also mess with the whole vibe of your homeschool, especially in the daytime. Because if they have not gotten their driver's license, you are the one driving them around. It makes it very hard to plan any sort of group activities or group learning in your homeschool anymore, which maybe by the time your oldest is getting a job and doing those things, they're not participating in your group activities as much. But boy, was I trying to hold on to that, at least a read aloud or something. But it was really difficult to schedule. The other thing that became really difficult was remembering to plan vacation and appointments and then communicate them to the kids to be able to take those days off. They had to, luckily these days usually go into an app and request that time off. But now I had to remember to tell them, oh, hey, I scheduled you a doctor's appointment on this date. You need to take off work. That was a big adjustment and helping them remember to do it. Yes, they should do it themselves and all that jazz. But honestly, if that date is important to you or they've got something, it's great to help them remember that until they get into the habit themselves. Um, the other thing that was really difficult for me when they got retail jobs was letting them kind of handle things, which is funny because that kind of comes naturally to me, giving over that independence. But man, when a boss treated them wrong, boy, did I want to get in there. And you can't. So that was a little tricky too. All right. So, what helped in these situations? My big family calendar in the kitchen, huge squares to write everybody's schedules. And what I would do in pen is at the top, I would get their work schedule when it came out on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it was for the next week. And I would write it across the top of each day. So right away, I could see who was working when, and then I could plan our days accordingly. Um, Giving them dates early, that was really helpful, and taking deep breaths. This is a really busy moment, but at some point they will drive themselves. The scheduling is still tricky, but now you are no longer needed to take them. We got really lucky with a Dunkin' Donuts being put in close to the house and the kids could walk to work. And boy, did that help. But it still means that if you're trying to plan something in your homeschool or in your family life, deep breaths, be flexible, and keep that big family calendar. All right, second thing that got difficult that kind of connects to this one, but I want to expand it a little more is scheduling family activities, vacations, really any sort of family thing. Where we used to have a ton of time together, it was a big adjustment to now have kids who had either jobs, theater activities, sports activities, social lives that took priority for them over maybe a family movie night I wanted to have that evening. And the hard part is as they get older, these things become more intense. So if they've always participated in theater, well, now they're in like the older kid theater and rehearsals are more often, performances are longer, rehearsals are longer, all of those things. Sports, they might travel more. I mean, you now have high schoolers. And so it adds to the time that it was taking up their social life. They now have peers that they really want to hang out with. And all kids are different. I have two extroverts and two introverts, but I got slammed the first time around with an extrovert who always wanted to be out. If anything was going on, she wanted to be there instead of at our home. So that was really tricky for sure. My middle two kids have been introverts. So it was totally different. I was like, oh, maybe this is what some of my friends are experiencing that I'm not experiencing because they have kids who still are content to be at home when they're not working or at theater. But the baby bringing up the rear, he wants to be wherever the action is as well. So that was a big adjustment as well. The last minute nature of teens, right? It's like Friday afternoon and they're all texting and figure out what they're doing Friday night. And suddenly it's like, oh, mom, aren't you driving me? Can't you drive me to the mall? Can't you drive me to the movies? Can't you take me to this person? And a good thing to remember here is they're not doing it to you on purpose. They're really not. It can feel like, don't you understand that I have things too that you need to let me know? But they are just, they're in their teen lives, living their lives, doing their thing. This whole world has opened to them for social activity and planning. And if they are not driving, they are going to rely on you. And it can be tricky. And then college enters the scene. And now, one of the reasons we loved homeschooling was we could vacation and travel when everyone else couldn't. Not true anymore. So now scheduling big activities couldn't happen when everyone else was in school because now I had children with college schedules and I had to schedule things on spring break just like the rest of the world, summer break just like the rest of the world. So there's a little bit of a grieving process in that, and give yourself time to grieve, to miss, to look back on the amazing things you were able to do and go ahead and grieve that you can't do them in the same way anymore. All right, so some of the things that helped me at that time is be very particular about what you're going to require attendance at. All right, so is family movie night every Friday night something that they really need to attend now? I can't give you the answers to that. But I can tell you that the more flexible you can be and the pickier you have to be about what they must attend will be helpful. I was really big in giving my kids a lot of choice. Hey, I would like to see this movie. Who is interested in going? Okay, who wants me to plan our movie date around them? Because there's a difference between, hey, I'd love to go if nothing else is going on in my life, versus I am committed to go. So please plan around me. And we would have to kind of talk about those things. So, and then I had to let go of the fact that maybe everyone wasn't going to come, that they might have something better to do. So again, very picky. If it's an important dinner, your grandparents are in town, I really want you to be home, at these times, then make those particular times less frequent so that everyone can agree on the urgency of those times. All right. I said offer choice. Make sure you're sharing, your desires of things that they really need to be at, and then get dates on the calendar early. Already, I have looked at the community college schedule because next year, because my oldest graduated from UNCW, I don't have to look at that one anymore. My two kids who are both going to be at the community college taking classes, I already have the fall break. The spring break for next spring is already on my calendar. When do classes end? When do they have other random days off? So that I know exactly what's going on. And that is really helpful when you are trying to plan family events and activities so it doesn't hit you by surprise that it happens. Get their activities on the calendar. I have trained and taught my kids to write things that are important to them on the big family calendar in pencil neatly about the time that they have it. But my daughter is into cosplay. She has lots of conventions she is now attending. She knows to mark those weekends on the calendar so that I can look down the month and see what's been added. She might mention to me, hey, I added a convention to the calendar. It's on there. And that way I can take a note of the things that are important to them. And we're working together to make that happen. But it is tricky. Family vacations are tricky. And I've already had my oldest not attend a big family vacation. So that is going to happen. And what I had to tell myself, because I have a lot of friends who are like, oh, I'm having a hard time though planning a vacation if my oldest can't come. I get it. Making reservations for 5 instead of 6 was harder than anyone told me it would be. But I don't want my younger kids not to have vacations and memories and special trips simply because their older siblings are too hard to schedule around. So we had to have a discussion. Some of this required a family meeting because the older kids were feeling left out. And we had to talk about like, hey, we'd love for you to be there, but this is also important that your siblings go to, whatever it was. So it is a really awkward thing to navigate, have family conversations, family talks. I mean, by the time my daughter had to miss vacation, we have been through this many times with movies and day trips and other field trips and things like that. Because even though she was opting out, sometimes they can still feel sad about that too. So you kind of have to talk through all of those things and work out that schedule. But that family calendar also is going to come in handy with this difficulty. All right, so the third thing that I have found tricky and difficult navigating the teen young adult years is who pays for what. There is no rule book here. There is no guide that is like, here's what good parents do. Here's what they make their kids pay for, and here's what they cover for them. You have auto fuel. You have the car itself. You have car insurance. You have car repairs. You have clothing they need. And if they're into fashion, clothing they begin to just want. Shoes, if they're into shoes, which in my house, it was not the girls, it still isn't, it's the boy and basketball shoes. How many shoes is reasonable? How many are you going to pay for versus how many do they have to buy? Social activities, proms, going out with friends, doing all these kinds of things. Tuition for college, room and board for college. Again, there is no right way to handle those things. Some of it's going to depend on your own family's financial circumstances. I remember when my kids were little, people all were talking about giving their kids allowance, starting their kids allowance, the right way to do it, allowance. They could learn money management. We had no money. We had no extra money. The idea of starting allowance with 8, 10-year-olds and having 4 kids, we just took it off the table. We just couldn't do that. So it didn't even become an issue in our house. And the same thing is going to happen in the teen years. Depending on your financial circumstances, who pays for these things might be different family to family. And it would be good for all of us to remember that. All right. So in our house, they have taken on some of this. And we have taken on other parts of it. We kind of have drawn a line like with social activities. It's okay to say things like, I decided that as parents, we would pay for 2 of their proms. If they wanted to go to prom, I wanted them to have that experience and I would pay twice. But here, homeschoolers can go to prom pretty much for all 4 years of high school, which is a little more than necessary. So really none of it's necessary. But most people go to a junior and senior prom. So I said I would pay twice. You could do it your freshman and sophomore year. You could do it your sophomore and senior year, whatever years you wanted. I would pay for 2 of them. And then the other ones were on you. If you still wanted to go, that was on you. Of course, with that comes the prom dresses, the suits, all of that stuff. So it's tricky. You have to talk through things. I will buy 2 dresses. Other than that, you can rewear the same dresses or you can buy your own. I will buy 2 suits. I mean, whatever it is. And of course, you have growing kids. So you have to factor that in. Like if it legitimately doesn't fit, are you still buying the other one? The big advice I have here is to talk, talk, talk. Make it clear how you're working it out. And with your spouse, your partner, plan and decide ahead if you can. It's hard when the car insurance one kind of creeped up on us. My daughter's turning 21. It was like, and she got her own car. So do we now punish her by making her pay the insurance on it? Do we still cover the insurance? How much longer do we cover insurance? We had to sit and finally figure that out. Do we cover it because we did choose to cover their insurance? Do we cover it till they graduate? What if they graduate early? What if they don't go to college? Do we just pick an age? As you can see, it's difficult and there's no right answer. Ask people around you how they handled it. What did they do with their kids? What worked for them? What benefits do they see? You will be amazed. People handle this all differently. There are people I have seen in college, chat boards still giving their kids allowance when they are in college. Now, that is not my jam. Not my jam. But there are still people doing that. So, ask around and find out what other people are doing, what advice they would give you, and use that wisdom. And keep in mind, you can always modify it. In general, it's easier to modify it in such a way that you are now offering to pay for more than what you were offering for the beginning. But hey, if your husband loses a job, if something happens, you might have to modify the other way. Okay, I have notes. So the next thing that was difficult and is difficult in parenting the young adult and older teen years is the crises moments. The what am I doing with my life moments. Yes, adults can have them too, but these young adults, a bad day can lead to a complete downward spiral of, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go to college. I don't know who I'm going to be in the world. Everything is wrong. I hate that, those crises moments. And they will have them. So my biggest advice is know that's normal. If you don't have other friends that you're talking to about this stuff, definitely find some. You need to hear that it's normal to be going through all that. Be a calming force as much as you can. It's easy for me to get like, I want to fix and change things. Okay, you don't like what you're doing? Let's do this. Let's research this. Let's find it. Remember that it doesn't have to change that day, right? Doesn't have to change that day. Just give it 48 hours for those emotions to pass. Don't get swept in it. Be that coming force. And remember, if 48 hours, changes still can be made. All right. And the final thing that has been tricky is mom time. And here is what is particularly tricky for homeschoolers when it comes to this, for homeschooling parents, is you're going to start to have more time. So the first tricky thing is, how do you want to fill it? A YouTube channel? I teach online. Do you want to volunteer somewhere? Do you want to explore a new hobby? Do you want to just get together with friends more? But I would encourage you to fill it. Fill it with something, because you're going to need it. Your kids don't want you to rely on them to fill your time. But then what becomes tricky is this balance of also still wanting to be available. My oldest just moved from 2 hours one direction at college to 2 hours the other direction for an internship. And I was glad that I still have availability to go visit her one evening, take her out to dinner, hang out, see where she was living, and all those kinds of things. I still want that kind of availability. When I was making my schedule for next school year, one of the things that surprised us last school year was my son's basketball schedule. And so I planned my availability around that. I want to still make the games, as many as I can. So we changed things so that that would still happen. I still want free time where I'm just dawdling around the house. So if someone comes in and wants to chat, I am available. I can put down what I'm doing. It's not necessary for me to have all my time occupied. So I've really had to balance that. And as they get older, of course, needing to be available can decrease, filling your time can increase, but you're going to have to find that balance for your own family. I read a quote. I couldn't find it. I looked everywhere. It was something on Instagram. The basic idea was that either you need to, if you have a goal and you know what it's going to take to get there, you can go for it and be at peace with all the work it demands. Or you can come to peace with what you are willing to give and alter your goal accordingly. Does that make sense? Like, if I have this big goal to achieve, with my book clubs or what I want to do online, I know what it takes to do some of these big things, the amount of people you have to hire, the commitment during the day, all that kind of stuff. So I can either come to peace with that and my lack of availability in other areas, or I can decide what I'm willing to give to my goals right now and come to peace with the fact that the goal might have to come down, that what I can achieve might need to be lowered or put off. That's what I look at it as. Oh, I have these goals in 2 more years, because that's when I'll have a lot more time to fill, when my youngest is almost 17. All right. So these have kind of been the biggest things for me, that I'm willing to speak about publicly that have happened and I've had to navigate as I'm transitioning to young adults, and parenting them. I am sure there's more on the horizon. But what has worked for you? Like, what are you kind of navigating? What solutions have you found? Maybe they'll end up being a part two of this as I think of more. But if nothing else, I hope you got some concrete ideas, tips that you can take away and can work into your family, or maybe just knowing that somebody else was going through the same things was helpful. So thanks for being here. Let me know if you have other questions about these young adult and teen years. I'd love to make a few more videos kind of sharing what we have done.